Hello, everybody. Welcome to our fifth day of daily casts. It feels like it's been forever for me, but that's probably my own fault. I've been having a ton of fun, and today was yet another fantastic day of scoops. And I am joined by yet another, just every single one, a banger panel of guests. These are all people I hope you've all met in the community before. They're all wonderful, as have honestly every guest I've had so far. But we've got CobraBubbles, Wu, and Coldlava, and excited to have all of them on. CobraBubbles, do you want to start introducing yourself and what your history is with Netrunner?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm CobraBubbles or Cobra or Rowan. I'm he/him pronouns, and I've been playing with Netrunner since 2014 on and off out here in Norwich in the east of England. And I'm also a web content editor for No Signal Games, so I've been editing stuff that goes up on the website for about a year or so, including many of the great articles you've seen in the past few days as part of preview season.
And also, any article I've ever written is only legible and understandable because of all the work he's done. So, thank you again. And it's a thankless job, but I'm very glad you're doing it. So,
Always a pleasure.
all right, Wu, streamer extraordinaire, you're up next.
Hey, I'm Baran Wu. I'm from Bristol. You may have seen me streaming on a Monday night. If you're in the UK, I generally start around 8:30 or whenever my little one decides that she wants to go to sleep. And I play a brand of competitive jank, is where I'd put myself. And I started playing around the Katara cycle.
Very cool. Also, very quickly, Coldlava, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, but first, I want to give a shout out to Izzy for coming in with, bet it's going to be a hard hitting stream tonight. I think for reasons we'll all be excited to talk about later. But Coldlava, I'll pass you the floor.
I'm Coldlava, he, him. I've been playing Netrunner about a year and a half. I started with Gateway and Startup, the original Startup with Ashes, and kind of moved to Standard when the first half of Borealis dropped. I've been trying to get more into the competitive side of Netrunner, essentially, but still play a decent amount of jank.
Hey, there's nothing to say that you can't play jank and be a competitive player at the same time. You just gotta be willing to sacrifice your darlings. I say as the person who is never gonna stop playing Ob until it rotates. But we've got yet again 10 cards to spoil, and with two people calling in from the UK, I do want to be a little bit respectful of their time. So let's start with the very first of the 10 cards we got spoiled today. Eru Ayasa Pessoa. Oh boy, I really apologies to everyone for that pronunciation. But this is a resource connection clone subtype. It says click, take a tag, run archives. If successful, instead of breaching archives, breach R&D. Use this ability only once per turn. And then it's threat 3. Whenever you breach R&D during a run on archives, access one additional card. And this is 3 influence in hardware in Anarch. So who's got a first take on this one for me?
Any Omar fans in the house?
I feel like we're missing some sort of resource protection in the set. This looks good, but given that it gives you a tag, you're going to need to protect it somehow.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I guess... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think from various things that we've seen, and listening to Davidus on the podcast today, it really sounds like tagging is going to be a little bit different in this set, and it feels like there's going to be some form of tag removal or tag exemption or something along those lines coming, which we haven't seen yet. So I think that's going to round out this card quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning we haven't seen that many Anarch cards yet. The only other one we've seen also interface with tag in some way. And apology. Okay, perfect. This did blow up the entire screen. It was Hannah Wheels, which had a click trash, gain click click, and remove a tag. So there's clearly some tag sub theme going on here, but I think even that aside, I think it's sort of interesting. We had Omar was mentioned. Let me see if I can pull up Omar real quick. Like Omar was classically a card you wanted to have access to in your Anarch deck, but apparently not strong enough to be on your ID ability. And so I think it's kind of interesting if Eru can fill some of the hole that Omar has been kind of lacking since the rotation of Rebirth.
I think the one thing that's fun here is that it means that you can import this into Shaper. In particular, people like Tau, where this is pretty fun. If you can negate that tag issue, then putting extra pressure onto archives, which is normally not something which Shaper does, is potentially pretty significant. And Shaper already has some pretty good additional kind of R&D multi-access, so you could actually make this quite significant and quite a threat if it's not dealt with quite quickly.
I will say I'm shocked to hear you thinking about this card in Shaper. I mean, it seems very out of character for you.
I'd say even in Criminal, like if you import this into Mercury and all of a sudden run archives through the top 3 of R&D, like seems pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, okay, if this is a Maker's Eye that the Corp then has to spend a click and 2 credits to trash, like, is that worth 1 influence? Maybe, I don't know. And then if there become more synergies, I think this card starts looking a lot more interesting. But
there's also a great synergy, and you've already mentioned the card, but with Wheels, because Wheels will give you a click and remove the tag. And so we've got potential for sort of deep dive Anarch decks here, using Eru to get into R&D easily, or assume it easily. Then you only kind of really have to break into HQ, make another run on archives, and then you can click Wheels to gain your 2 clicks and deep dive, and all of a sudden you've got like a pretty good engine. You've got Katorga Breakout if you need to get your deep dives back. Feels like there could be a deep dive Anarch deck there somewhere.
I think maybe the one issue with that is that Eru doesn't actually make the successful run on R&D. It's just that instead of breaching archives, you breach R&D, which is slightly different. But yeah, it's going to come and bite that exact synergy, unfortunately. But
this is why I come on, just to make sure that my ideas actually work.
Yeah,
it's good to get them shut down early.
It turns out that we've made Netrunner too complex, and so we all miss these things. Like, I mean, this is breach and successful run getting confused, and like arguably the text is improved with this, but it's definitely one of those weirder cases.
Yeah, I think it's easy to sort of shortcut in your brain to Sneak Door Beta, right? When you look at this card, the card we've been familiar with for a long time. It's quite different in a number of significant ways. I think the tag is a nice balance on this, but I do think the threat of it, pun not intended, when you put it down, you pop it down, you make the 1 run, maybe clear the tag, and then the Corp just has to respect archives pressure for the rest of the game, which is like what Sneak Door does in Criminal. Pretty effective way of like spreading the Corp thin and creating some difficulty. I think it might be sort of quietly better than it maybe looks at first glance. I also really like some of the flavor stuff in this card. There's a feeling I always get when I'm looking at a card in Netrunner that like represents such a like positive and like homely and nice scene. I start to get worried. It makes me think that this is narrative putting Chekhov's gun on the wall and saying, hey, this is a nice family we've just introduced. Don't worry about what happens to them. I'm sure they'll be fine.
Yeah. I do think, as is being discussed in the chat, Thunder Art Gallery, also abbreviated as TAG, is maybe a potential synergy with this. You know, you play this in Anarch, or you like either import this into Crim or import Thunder Art Gallery into Anarch, and suddenly maybe you got a jank stew going. Just get your two and three cost resources out, and suddenly you're gaining all that tempo back from clearing the tag, or at least some of that tempo back.
Yeah,
I guess we just have to see if there's some form of something similar to Citadel coming,
Yeah.
or along those lines. I think it's what we maybe all expecting, but it might not quite take that shape.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
that's a big upcoming question.
Thematically, I was trying to figure out exactly what's happening and why, like, gaining the tag and running archives is coming home from work early. As far as like the flavored text is concerned.
Maybe she's a clone and gets bounty hunted when she skips out of work. I don't know. It's a little bit like maybe there's probably some connection there, but yeah, let's move on. You know, this was actually, and I should have said this is from the new Null Signal Games podcast. They had Dividus on to talk about the development process for Liberation and the Automata Initiative. And this was the first card, and then the second card they discussed. And actually, you know what? I will very quickly say we made zero mention of the threat ability on Eru. I think threat 3, whenever you breach R&D during a roll in archives, access one additional card is like a somewhat significant buff. And then people also pointed out that this text you can install Eru and then use Divide and Conquer, and get to access an additional card without taking the tag as a downside.
Oh, that's not tied to the ability. Interesting. I thought it was tied to the ability.
I mean, it's tied to any ability that allows you to breach R&D during runs on archives.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So unfortunately, if I'm right, this wouldn't work with Virtuoso because Virtuoso access is after the run, right? Oh, and then
Yes.
that's an access on HQ anyway. So
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So it's like it's weirdly it's an interesting wording, and I would almost prefer it just said when you use this card, access one additional card. But instead, there's going to be one edge case that people will always come at us with. But
You've got to give something for the Divide and Conquer fans.
exactly. Okay, well, with that said, let's move on to the next card that also is an honor card and also has threat. This is Living Mural. This is a 3-cost 1MU program icebreaker killer Trojan. It says install only on a piece of ice. Threat 4, when you install this program, it gets +3 strength for the remainder of the turn. This ability is active if any player has 4 or more agenda points. Interface 1 credit, break 1 subroutine on a sentry protecting this server. 1 credit, +2 strength, and a base strength of 1 and 2 influence.
So the main thing I like about this is that it's really good with Palangi and also probably Egret, and we should talk about Egret because that seems to be pretty important for the cycle. But the numbers on it are pretty good, and the fact that you could use this to break everything on the server as long as you can turn it all into sentries, maybe that's pretty decent. I wasn't sure at first. I was like, why would you play this over Eka? But I kind of read the card about 4 times and understood it a bit more. I'm less sure whether the threat on this is ever going to become relevant because it feels like it's already going to be down. I guess maybe you like simul chip it back out, but
my favorite thing about this card is that it's a cool frog. But also I agree. I think it's a really interesting card. I think the synergy with things like Egret is definitely something to look at. It's also just one of those cards where, a bit like when you're playing against Kit and you don't want to stack your code gates too much, or I guess the reverse. Against Kit you do want to stack your code gates, but against Arisana you're going to be concerned about where you're putting your sentries. So as not to play into this card too much, and sometimes the corp will just draw more sentries than they want to, have to put them in the same server, and you get to benefit off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, as people are saying in the chat, that is a really like Ren Fair looking archer guy, which I find very amusing.
Yeah, it's up there. It's weird that apparently this is a thing now we have to do, and SG has to do every cycle, where they make Archer look really dumb. First with Revolver, and now with Living Mural. We've got killers that dunk on Archer, but though I'm not even sure this card dunks on Archer that well. I haven't actually looked at the Archer breakpoint, but
If you get the threat ability, it breaks it for 5.
yeah, it's not even that great, right? I guess it's
Better
like
than a lot of
Same.
things.
I guess it breaks it for 4, and you just let the corp gain 2, right? But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean this is an interesting card, and like it's the obvious comparison is of course going to be Ika, and like Living Mural seems like you want to be bouncing it to justify it over Ika, because Ika I can run multiple servers with, and I don't have to pay the upfront. Like I pay less upfront to break the first piece of ice. But maybe if corps go back to a meta where they're stacking a lot of ice, Living Mural starts looking a little bit more appealing, so they don't have to keep paying the 2 to move it around.
Ika
Yeah.
also really sucks against PE decks where they're just playing like 2 Tithes and an enemy, and you have to break them with an Ika. Whereas this would feel very nice against those decks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how it would do against those decks, because it does get tied to one server, which is the main downside. I feel like you want to play this along with another killer that can just kind of break things on other servers, and then this is for whatever server has the worst killers, you just throw this down and make it not a problem.
So you could do, or you can take the jank route and you can put it in inversificator kit, and then you can move it wherever you want.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. Let me pull up Inversificator. And when I say the other option to me, like this card, so this is Inversificator. You do this in kit, you break a sentry, and then you stack all the sentries on one remote, and you've got Living Mural. I think you could also do something. What was the thing I was thinking of? I mean, you've got cards like Simulchip to reset it, and so like this card starts looking a lot like the Euler and Gauss. So it's like a weird completion to those cycles of like, oh, here's a card I can, cycle it with a Simulchip or some other card to get the on install effect. The card this was actually reminding me of the most, even though it's not a Trojan, is Cyber Cipher, which like used to see quite a bit of play because it was just really efficient for its cost. But like Cyber Cipher always had 4 base strength, and Living Mural just only gets that 4 base strength some of the time, which seems like a little bit of a harder sell to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like Cyber Cipher, you can sort of see the game plan of just having 2 of them be your solution for them only being attached to one server, right? You get one on the remote, one on R&D. If you're playing the sort of standard Shaper game plan, lock the remote, control R&D. That's a spot you can be in that might be reasonable. You can also play Simulchip or Rejig. It's another one that can pick it up, put it back down. And yeah, I like the comparison to Gauss and Euler, which are both breakers I really like, but are hard to like make them the central part of your rig. Generally, they're just lacking slightly in efficiency. And I think this will be similar, I suspect. It also implies that this frog is secretly a great mathematician, which is interesting.
Yeah, or this Living Mural contains advanced math, so we'll see. Someone will find a frog-based math pun to work with us with, and when they do, they should send me that name so that as soon as I can find a deck to put this in, we can collaborate. Because like, hey, I do enjoy my Shaper Jank, and this seems a bit like a Shaper Jank card, but a fun one. I do kind of like the image of the frog's tongue just like skipping around the server, just going like, gonna break that, gonna break that. But yeah, let's move on to the final runner card for the day. Pretty corp heavy day again, which makes sense. We had some very heavy runner stuff at the beginning. This was the last card discussed on the dev podcast, and this has no thread on it, but I think it's still an interesting card. This is Bahaya Bands. It's a 2-cost run event. Its text is: run any server. If successful, resolve 2 of the following in any order. Draw 2 cards, install 1 card from the grip, paying 1 credit less, remove 1 tag, place 4 credits on this event. You can spend host credits to pay trash costs for the remainder of this run. And then it is 1 influence neutral.
So what are we calling this card? We had Deuces Wild and Deuces Mild. Is this Deuces Styled?
I think it's Deuces' child.
Oh, big shout.
And I instantly see it, and what I want to do is put in an always be in running Adam, which I can't do because it won't be legal at the same time. But you know, that's my main thought about this card, is that's where it goes.
It's always eternal, my friend.
It's interesting. Like it is very similar to Deuces Wild, but it's also doing very different things. Like one of the great modes of Deuces Wild is if you get hard hitting news, you can gain money and clear a tag in the same click, which you can't do here. But you're basically always getting a run and 2 other things, which is almost 3 of the modes of Deuces, minus the expose, which was always great as well.
Ah, but it's okay. We don't have to worry about hard-hitting news anymore.
Technically correct.
Yes, technically correct. The best kind of correct. Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. Dividus, I believe on the podcast, said something like this isn't meant to be a Deuces Wild replacement, but it's very hard to not compare it to Deuces Wild. And the next closest point of comparison, I think, which is not an unreasonable one, is something like Dirty Laundry. But it's a bit hard to consistently extract the same amount of value out of Bahaya bans as Dirty Laundry. Like, you need to be playing, like, if you're in an asset heavy meta, I think you could play Bahaya bans, and then it's actually much better than Dirty Laundry, because you can trash a 4-cost asset and draw 2 cards for 2 credits, which I think is a little bit better than the 5th credit that Dirty Laundry gains.
Yeah.
But it's an unusual card, and I'll be kind of interested to see like the places it does and doesn't show up, and what metas that encourages or doesn't encourage.
It kind of feels like it fits into Sable quite nicely. Like she'd quite like to run her mark, get a click back, draw 2 cards, and do another thing. It's just whether it's good early, because like I guess you've probably got something that you want to install after you've drawn 2 cards. So that's probably fine. Like it feels like it feels a bit like a criminal card, more than anything else.
I guess there might also be just some applications. It's not often that outside of Shaper you get to install just a card of any type. I mean, even in Shaper, a card of any type from your grip in the middle of a run. I don't know if there are any weird applications to do with that, but it could be interesting.
Yeah, I guess Imp is probably the biggest one.
Yeah, or I guess you can install something and immediately set it to your world tree.
Too late for that, I think.
Is it?
Yeah, because it's successful. Yeah, be too late.
No, because won't they both be successful run triggers? And so you could resolve your Bahaya bans and then resolve your world tree, and it can target. Oh, I'm sorry. You're saying like, yeah. If you install
No,
world
I see,
tree
right.
using Bahaya bans, it will miss it. If you already have the world tree installed, you can install a card and use it as fuel.
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
Netrunner, where all the rules are clear and never have any confusing interactions. I also want to give a quick shout out to Eric saying we need an X days since an event has been spoiled and someone mentions prepaid. We didn't mention it, but the chat sure did. And yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean, similar. I guess Ghost Tongue Essa is always looking for more value events, right? That deck was often playing deuces, now
that's
rotated.
true.
Might look at this.
Yeah, it definitely might. I'd hope, we'll see. Maybe there'll be some more impact. I'd hope there's some better events to splash than. I mean, I know there's already a Deuces mild, but this feels pretty mild, I think. But
I think it's good tech against asset decks or tag decks, right? Or ideally, if you're expecting a lot of MBN asset decks, such as Epiphany Analytica, for example, getting the trash and the tag clear in the same card, and otherwise it can be card draw for you is pretty powerful, I think.
Yeah, I think this like if we see like this card almost seems designed for like a CTM meta where you can run, gain tempo, and then like clear the tag. Um, and it's like it'll be interesting to see if you know we've been also seeing a lot of yellow asset support printed in this cycle. So like as much as I'm like talking a little dismissively, I think this card can really play a role in the right circumstances.
Yeah.
All right, should we move on to the next card?
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right. This is yet another card from the NSG podcast, I believe. This is Fofo Ozetti. This is a upgrade sysop. It says the res cost of each piece of ice protecting the server is lowered by 2 credits. Threat 4. The res cost of each card in the root of the server is lowered by 2 credits. And then finally, when your turn ends, you may move this upgrade to the root of another server. And then this is a 2 to trash, 2 influence HB card.
So I'm
So
not a
we,
huge.
you go ahead.
So I'm normally not a huge HP player, but this is one of the best or most exciting for me cards I think I saw today. This thing just kind of looks wild. Uh, it the worst case is if you res one piece of ice, you're at least getting a credit back. You're probably going to at least res 2, make 3, and make the runner spend 2. And if it's threat 4, it's a mini Breaker Bay grid. If there could be, I don't know, there could be some combos that could come back with that were around Breaker Bay grid, like Spombo, if the right additional support is with it.
Yeah, very quickly for those that don't know this weird, obscure, fairly obscure combo. Breaker Break Grid let you lower the res cost of cards in the server by 5, and then you would get to put calibration testings in that remote, which you'll note cost 3, so you could res it for free. And then you use cards like Team Sponsorship to cycle them all back whenever you scored an agenda, and there were some really nasty combos you could do with that. I assume that we're a little bit further away from that, but you never know. Maybe NSG wants us to have a little scoop of combo every now and again. But
Well, we're also all really enjoying the like triple Wardroid tracker meta that we're in, right? So now they can res them for free. So that's good.
yep, that's definitely a good
The
shout. Though
I
I
think the sorry, Jeff, go for it.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the other Sithop we've seen is slightly better in the Warlord Dragger deck du jour, personally. I just love this lovely Grandad. He seems like a nice guy for a Sithop. Big hug mug, really nice art. I'm a fan.
Yeah, I know. There's a couple people in chat down this art. I actually really like it. It's not a very like classical Netrunner style, and I think the other piece we've seen from this artist is like very strong, and this is a little bit more subdued. But I actually really I love the like coziness of this piece of art. Um, but yeah, I mean, I what do you guys think of this card? I think it's I have some thoughts, but I want to make sure y'all get a chance as well.
I mean, I really like it in terms of it's the type of econ, if you want to call it that, that I enjoy in Netrunner, where it's not just straight econ. It's something that you've really got to work around, and I enjoy building around that kind of ridiculousness. It's normally those type of cards which don't end up in the competitive decks because they're often not seen as just being better than just playing a card which gives you money. But I could see it having having like a decent shout in some sort of probably tier 1.5 decks. And we'll kind of have to see.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I thought of when I saw this card was harmonic ice, right? If you're playing all the harmonics, you're playing a deck with a bunch of ice, most of which costs 2 or 3, well, all of which costs 2 or 3, and this guy just gives you a bunch of free ice reses. Like discounts provide this interesting thing compared to other economy cards in that they let you do things from little to no credits that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do, which makes you a bit less predictable for the runner. So yeah, I think that the first half has some interesting impact. Being able to build a deck that can leverage both halves of the ability and also like reliably get the threat 4 at the times that you need to seems like a challenge, but I'm interested in it for sure.
I guess
Yeah.
I immediately look at. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Cobra or
I,
Cold
I
Lava.
was gonna
Excuse
say
me.
when you squint and maybe you have to squint really hard, I start to see kind of like a tranquility. But I was trying to build some HB decks in the past that needed a different region, so you couldn't run tranquility, and they were often a bit econ starved. And I could see this kind of going in like an Asa deck that wants to run another region for some reason, so can't run tranquility, and this kind of just gives a little bit of boost to that econ engine.
I guess there's also actually one thing to consider, and I'll bring it up later when we talk about another card, and that's a big part of this cycle seems to be focused on D-res, and so there could be more value in a card like this, which allows you to re-res your ice cheaper if it keeps getting D-resed by some pesky criminals.
Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things. I guess to me, I immediately look at this and go like, well, if I was playing like 2020 era precision design, but like I can't play the like one of the problems with that deck, at least to me, was once the next rotation hit, it could no longer play advanced assembly lines, which is like a slightly better econ card, right? Like most of the time, like you don't need to do much. Advanced assembly lines is just going to make you 3 credits, and sometimes it's going to have additional upside. And Vovo Ozetti is going to sometimes make you 2 credits and then have additional upside, where sometimes he makes you 1 and then 3 and then et cetera, et cetera. But if I think about it, it's like, oh yeah, for that style of PD deck, like if I can stick Vovo in the remote, leave him face down, that's a challenging threat. And if they don't contest, oh, I still get value out of him in the future because at some point the runner does have to come after that remote. Or maybe even better, if the runner chooses to go after a central instead, I can just res him and slide him over to where I'm going to put my new ice. So it definitely seems like it's got some interesting slots that you could maybe try and find, but I think it is very hard to see whether like it's a the other obvious comparison of Akitaro Watanabe from the original core set. Akitaro saw effectively no play and has a higher trash cost, so maybe Vovo is just going to be a friendly grandpa sitting in our binders rather than sitting in our decks.
Was anyone else playing back when Akitaro was legal? Have I got longer pedigree than the rest of you on that regard? I do remember trying to play Watanabe, and yeah, it stays in your deck for about 1 game.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously a lot less flexible than Vovo, right? The moving around is a really big deal. I think I like the combination of these effects on this card for that reason.
Yeah.
Speaking of a big deal,
Speaking of a big deal, let's move on to the next card. We've got Oppo Research. It's a 2-cost NBN terminal operation, Gray Ops. Excuse me. Play only if the runner stole or trashed a corp card during their last turn. After you resolve this operation, your action phase ends. Give the runner 2 tags. Threat 3, you may pay 5 credits to give the runner 2 tags. This is 2 influence out of NBN. This is probably one of the cards that it's been, constantly a part of discussion. So it's whether or not this style of card would exist, and here we see what we're going to be living with for at least a little while. So curious to hear y'all's thoughts.
yeah, this has to be like the most successfully predicted card of all time, right? A lot of people had ideas about almost exactly similar to what this card ended up being. I mean, even before they announced the threat, I remember Andre on one stream just like blind guessing what this card was, more or less. But yeah, I mean, cool to have around. I think will be really interesting to see how this plays.
I
Yeah, I
just
think it.
go ahead.
I'm gonna say I think this is in a good spot. It looks both weaker in some ways than hard hitting news and stronger in others. I think it comes out overall maybe a little bit weaker, but I think it's still probably better overall for the game.
So I guess could you expand a little bit on that a little bit more? Like, why do you think this is like what's the upsides and downsides to this compared to hard hitting news from your perspective?
So the two downsides are it's a much stricter trigger that you have to steal or trash a card, and early game you can only give the runner 2 tags, which is probably better overall for the game, but then you only get the full effect once you're at threat 3. The upside is that you don't, as the corp, you don't have to outmoney the runner, and they're going to have to spend their turn clearing the tags. You just need 7 credits, and the 4 tags land.
Yeah, I think that is a pretty substantial change where the runner can't just be like, okay, I've got 1,000,000 credits, nothing you can do can hurt me. You do actually just have to be ready to forfeit a turn or maybe include some tag tech. Um, is definitely an interesting and maybe very significant change.
I think the big thing here as well, the fact that you don't have to outmoney the runner anymore, kind of opens this up to a lot of decks which normally wouldn't be able to play it. So get ready to take 4 tags in PE and stuff like that, because it's gonna happen. Like they need like, okay, 7 credits, I guess, like once it's at threat to give you all 4 tags, but that's probably a lot less than what you could safely kind of have to pay if you were gonna try and land a news.
Yeah, I mean, it depends a lot because there was a ton of CTM strategies that were basically like both just trying to get the runner and the corpse to be playing between 0 and 5 credits. And in that situation, the hard hitting news was often just the 3 credits to play it. And Oppo research is always going to cost the corp, the 7 credits to really make it sting, I think. So like it's definitely going to have some downsides in that style of deck, but the like I just need to get 4 tags on the runner eventually is definitely going to prefer Oppo research over something like a hard hitting news.
I think it also has like interesting implications runner side playing against it, right? In terms of just how your economy has to operate over the course of the game. There's less of a requirement, like there's less of a hard cap on, or rather a lower limit on how much money you need to have in your runner deck in order to be competitive against a meta with this card in it than it was for hard hitting news, because the amount of money you have, like the important thing is that you need to have about 8 credits to clear the tags, basically, but you don't have to be able to contest the trace because you don't have the choice, right? So the possibility of playing more runner decks that have less of their slots dedicated to just raw econ, less of playing liberated account as a tech card, that kind of thing, I think will create some space for diversity in runners that we haven't seen in a while.
I'm going to say very quickly, it also opens up to me, like, not saying that people are going to start running Red Team because of Oppo research, but I do think Red Team is a style of card that you basically couldn't play when Hard Hitting News was around, which is this, like, upfront, expensive run economy engines just didn't exist because you just would get hit with 4 tags right away. And it's like, yeah, now you can maybe safely Red Team archives, and maybe most of the time you'll be safe to red team R&D up until the point where you have some agenda points, and you'll probably be able to recover and not get set completely behind by just trying to get your run econ engine going, which is
Yeah,
like
see
a
also World Tree, right?
yeah, World
Like some
Tree is
similar
another
answers.
really good shout, and maybe the more plausible deck to see in competitive play. So So yeah, I mean this card feels like it's going to be a pretty big shift, and it's there's going to be a lot of different changes around it, and I suspect we don't. It's like it's just going to be very hard to predict from just looking at this card how it's going to shake out in the meta, because it's, while both being very similar, is different in a bunch of ways that can be a little bit difficult to evaluate what their actual consequences are.
Yeah, for sure. I think the threat threshold here is quite interesting as well. Like, what kind of play that's going to lead you to as Corp. I mean, I'm sort of imagining the old thing we used to do as like big money Wayland of just advancing a 3-pointer almost naked. Um, Back then it was the threat of mid-season replacements. Now it's the threat of, what if you come and take this, and maybe you're paying a cost for it because it's an STS drone deployment or something. Then it's immediately threat 3, and you're immediately at risk of the 4 tags. I think that opens that interesting just cards on the table, Wayland style in particular, that I really enjoyed in the past.
Yeah, for instance, if you were to show the runner an agenda and then immediately throw it into the bin, um, just as an example, then it's like, do you actually want to go and get it?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Yeah, and in that respect, it is a little bit like mid-season's, a card that we've mentioned a little bit, but I haven't pulled up, so just going to pull that up really quickly. This was another trace card, and this was it's one of those cards that people sometimes say they prefer to hard hitting news, and I always raise my eyebrows a bit quizzically at that sentence. But there's like Oppo research is some kind of interesting hybrid of mid-season's replacements and hard hitting news in terms of its conditions. So it'll be interesting to see how this ends up evolving and landing. Any final thoughts before we move on to the next card?
Well, just a final art thought, maybe. I just like how chilled out Lou is, even though he's very patently being watched by about 4 different very conspicuous people. Just vibing, just having a great time. Yeah, respect.
It does. I'm a little bit confused about what balcony has a what looks to be a bathtub and then also like restaurant staff on it. But hey, it's the future. Who knows what restaurants will look like, right?
Absolutely.
But anyway, let's move. We now move on to the first of our fantastic Andre spoilers. For those of you who haven't watched the Metropole Grid video on this, I would definitely check it out. It is incredibly well produced, and uh, he spent an hour on these next four cards, and we're going to spend probably 15 to 20 minutes on them. So there's a lot that we won't say that he did. So I think it's definitely worth going back and watch. Um, but here is Slash and Burn Agriculture. This is a 4/2 agenda expansion and a new subtype, Expendable, which is click, credit, reveal and trash this agenda from HQ, place 2 advancement counters on 1 installed card that you can advance. And this is a Wayland card.
What a delightful design. Isn't it brilliant? I just love this card. I think it's so fun how it just interacts with the core rules of the game. Um, yeah, putting agendas in archives, and that's known to both players for like a powerful benefit. It's just a really fun design, I think.
I think
Yeah.
it's pretty cool that it's completely unsplashable fast advance. I think that's a f- a really fun aspect of it. Like this is Wayland fast advance, or it's probably going to be used for fast advance. I mean, there's a few other things that you might want to use it for, but you you can't import this anywhere else. You can't put this into sports, for instance. And so it's kind of very much defined to Wayland because of that. I think that's a really cool aspect of it.
Yeah, and well, yeah, use it for fast advance. I mean, I can see this being used as a seamless as well, just to get a Atlas counter,
Yep.
or to score itself. Since it is a 4/2, you're gonna want to probably some way to score it from never advancing it. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, it
and
also go for it, sorry.
no, go ahead.
was just going to say it also gives you lines to in faction in Wayland. Previously, I don't think we had a way to fast advance an Atlas and have it have a counter. Not since Titan left the game, but now we can do that. With you play this into Audacity, you were going to be trashing it anyway. Yes, it's face up, so the runner knows it's there, but they usually check archives after Audacity anyway, so there's not a lot of downside, and you get to fast advance a 4-2 that way for what, 2 credits or something, 3 credits, pretty good.
Yeah, I quite like the combo with Audacity because, like you said, I mean it's not going to stick around anyway, so you might as well use it. So it's definitely pretty good.
It's a 1 credit fast advanced 4-2.
So I guess the question then is like, do you play this in every Wayland deck? Like, is it that good?
I don't
Definitely
know.
No.
I mean, Wayland famously have just a great agenda suite, right? I mean, even just the system update agendas, right? Atlas, Oaktown, Hostile are just really good. If I was playing like in the Ob style rush decks that we've been seeing, that are trying to score from the board more than they are trying to score from hand, I'd still play Oaktown over this for sure. I guess that deck gets some slots back now that it can't play Global Food anymore. So you might look at this, but you'd probably still look at above the Law and Azef before it. So yeah, I don't think so. But I think in like Outfit Fast Advance, or if you're doing Fast Advance some other way, I think this is a powerful card, definitely worth looking at.
I mean, I don't know well, at least with the recent one that's been scoring from the board, it has 2 seamless in it, and that you could get some influence back if you really want to play this as a seamless as opposed to a fast advance tool. But yeah, I guess with GFI going, I don't know how great the seamless is, because that's really why the seamless is there with GFI.
There's some fun jank that you could do with this and some moon pools, probably out of Ob, so that you can kind of pull the more moon pool at the start of your turn by trashing a 4-cost with a Sphegator or something along those lines. You're gonna need a ton of draw to like draw a load of agendas, but there's definitely something pretty fun that you could be doing along those lines.
Well, unfortunately, again, I'm here to rain on your fun parade.
Oh my gosh, Jeff!
Moonpool is reveal up to 2 face down cards in archives. So
Just a
it's
fun police coming out of me tonight.
yeah. Now that said, Moonpool in theory can still work with Audacity, but probably not Slash and Burn Agriculture. And so I think it's a cool combo, and maybe someday we'll print. There'll be a version of Moonpool that does allow face ups. Maybe it'll even be in Wayland. Who knows? But yeah, I think unfortunately.
In which case, what I'll be using this for is to double advance a defense construct on archives and make my own Spin Doctor for free influence. So that's me done on that card.
Hey, you know what? In Op, now we can pop our defense construct and tutor for a 1-coster. Maybe we'll even tutor for Vovo and not worry about the fact that we're spending like 3 cards and 4 influence, or like 3 influence to tutor a 2 influence 1-coster. But yeah, I don't know. This is I think it's an interesting card, and I think my question was like, and I don't, it's unfair for me to ask this of the 3 of you on the call here, with not knowing the rest of the card and having played 0 games of Liberation Standard, is like, is this card good enough to make you stop looking seriously at other Wayland archetypes, or at least to make this potentially like push Wayland Fast Advance style decks into like the premier Wayland archetype? But I'll
I
ask the
guess
question.
the one place actually I would really see this now that I think about it is in startup Wayland Fast Advance, where it becomes a tool that's very much missing, an in-faction tool which they don't really currently have access to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Great point. I think it's hard to. The thing with Wayland at the moment is it's kind of 2 factions, right? It's Ob and it's all the rest, because you can do so many different things in Ob. Like you, Jeff, I'm a big fan. Play a lot of Ob, and it's tough to see this fitting into that many of the kinds of ob shells we've seen before, but then ob is so bizarrely flexible that like that could well end up being a thing. I certainly think while outfit loses some key pieces with the rotation, just the pure fast advance that outfit has available with this card, sort of for extra redundancy, is actually quite extraordinary. Um, you know, you're probably not playing hard hitting news anymore, so you free up some influence to put those red level clearances back in for your Mavericks, Clot plays, and you can just really go all in a way that I think could be really impressive for sure.
You don't think outfit plays full research?
I don't know. You don't have that. You're not generally playing that many things that one can trash because they get to do it for free with the bad pub.
Yeah, that's true.
I think just and you don't have boom anymore, so you have to dedicate a lot more card slots to your kill package, which is tricky.
Yeah, I was about to say, oh no, you were already playing 2 boom most of the time, but probably to get the same effect, you have to play something like 3 end of the lines, which is definitely a much trickier. You're giving up slots and you have to draw 2 cards rather than 1, which is a big downside. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I know there's some good players that are pretty down on it because, hey, why are you giving up 2 points to just score 2 points? But I think there's board states where that can be good for the corp, and there's gonna be board states where that's absolutely horrible and possibly game losing for the corp. And it's figuring out how good slash and burn is relative to that, and how often you can get that to trigger in a way that's beneficial for you versus like pretty harmful for your game plan.
Yeah, I think if we get one more card other than Spin Doctor for some sort of archives recovery or protection, it's in a much better spot.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. It's now that this card exists, you really don't want to be leaving Spin Doctors on the table against Wayland.
That's a good point. Well, let's move on. We were joking about Defense Construct to search for a 1-cost card. Well, what if we save some of that influence and use this next card that Andre also spoiled, Cyber Sand Harvester. It's a 2-cost asset. Whenever you res a piece of ice, place 2 credits on this asset. You can spend hosted credits to pay install costs. Not click, just trash. Take all credits from this asset. This is 2 influence with a 4 trash cost.
I have so much to say about this. So I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna let you have your thing, and then I'm gonna come in with about 20 things that you can do with this card. But you two go first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think this sees play outside of Ob. I don't quite think the numbers are there on it to do that. Just 2 credits every time you res a piece of ice. You really need to res 3 pieces of ice before this gets trashed to get anything worth it from it. But inside Ob, there's a lot of 1-costers. We have some 1-costers we want. I think we could use some more. We have Urban Renewal and Malapert Data Vault, I think, are the 2 big ones that you'll want to be able to find with this. And the other thing I was gonna say is I feel like this card looks a lot more playable at 1 outside of Ob, but I think in Ob that would just break the game.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, for
interesting.
sure.
It does look like this card kind of wants to be 1 cost, but if you put it at 1 cost, suddenly Op is instant speed fetching Rashidas and Spin Doctors. So I definitely remember some people doom saying about like, oh, Op is going to ruin design, like it's just setting a straight jacket on design, and this is maybe the type of card that like needs to be printed has to be printed differently because of Op existing than not. But at the same time, like, hey, if I res 2 pieces of ice and then the runner and I can like take 1 or 2 credits off of this from installing, and then the runner goes and trashes this for 4, and that lets me play an Oppo research. Maybe that's like good enough. And if they don't do it, it just slowly accumulates value over time. Like, this could have a case. I think it's a little bit difficult for this to be super strong outside of op, but I'll be interested to track this card.
Before you unload on a spa, I'll just quickly say I think in Orb this card is a really interesting, like from a rules perspective. I think, like I don't really know when I trash this and I'm resolving the Orb ability. Where are the credits that were on it? I guess they're in some kind of nebulous. They can't be on the card because it's trashed, but they can't be in my credit pool yet because I haven't resolved the effect. I guess they're in some kind of nebulous third zone. Very peculiar.
Yeah, it's the same with what's that one? Not reconstruction contract where the advancement counters are floating in the middle of nowhere and then they land on what you obbed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this weird. I mean, it's like that's always been the thing we've just accepted as naturally part of the game. But then op comes along and says, "Oh, I'd like to do something in that window there," and we all go, "Wait, what? This works?" Uh, but yeah, this is I don't know. Um, According to Jamie, there's a rule specifically for this. Uh, it's in the set aside zone. So that's the thing that we all get to go and read up on after the stream. But I think I think the floor is yours to talk about this card. I'm very excited to hear what you have to say.
So we'll start with stuff that you can do in Ob. Here's the fun stuff which I'm going to be trying to do in Ob with this. I'm going to be pulling out an Amaze Amusements at the last minute to give the runner 2 tags when they try and steal my slash and burn out of the bin. When they are already too late to jack out. So that's quite fun. I'm going to be pulling out a Ben Musashi at instant speed when they're just about to access my City Works project, which has got 2 counters on it. So they can no longer steal it, but they still have to take the 4 meat damage. That's going to be fun. I'm gonna be pulling out like 2 to 3 overseer matrices over the course of the game, probably sticking them all on an urban renewal and having some fun there. That all sounds good. So they're the like 3 things which are currently released that I think are like really fun to pull with this, alongside like urbans and bladderworts and stuff like that, which is already common. Other things I think are cool about this card is that it's playing more into the fact that NSG is clearly of the opinion that former carry is tier 1 ice material, because this works great with former carry. But the card that I want to play with this is a 2-cost card, which is it's a 2-cost ice, which is like a rare slot, especially in Ob. You're always looking for that 2-cost ice. In Ob, you're also looking for a way of getting those combo pieces back into your deck. And so the card that you're going to be playing with this is Mirage, which is still
Oh
going to
my
be in rotation.
goodness.
So for those of you who don't know this card, because why would you? Because it hasn't seen play since like Adam was a big thing. This is a card which this is a piece of ice that dereses itself. It costs 2, so you're gonna basically you can't normally afford to play this card because eventually it just saps all your thing. It's strength 0 code gate, but if you break it, then you are going to be running on archives. It moves you to archives. And if you don't break it, then it subfires and it says you may draw 1 card, then shuffle 1 card from HQ into R&D, which means that you put this on HQ and you can kind of keep HQ completely safe. It also means that you could play this in a Jin Techie deck along with the new asset, which means that if you're running on archives, you're going to do 2 net. Like there's some pretty fun stuff going on along those lines, and then you can just keep getting value from this card by re-resing and de-resing your Melinzi. And finally, divert power is still a card, and so as much as like you think, well, you know, you've got like 16 pieces of ice in like a fairly standard deck, and you're only gonna maybe res 5 to 10 of them, like especially when you've got one of these cards down. if 3 of them are Stavkas, and then all of a sudden you de-res all your Stavkas so that you've got like 7 strength Stavkas again, I think divert power could be pretty fun here. And you're saying it's only an ob. I could see this in decks like red decks which suffer with money a little bit. So possibly even probably not PE, but certainly things like Ag Infusion and other similar decks along those lines, where you kind of want something that just gains you a bit of money, and Rezzing Ice is good. And Asa, I think someone just mentioned Asa, but yeah, Asa and other purple decks, I can completely see this because you've also got a lot of D-res happening there, and so you can get more and more value out of this. I think this is potentially one of the funnest cards I've seen today. It might not be the best, but it's probably the one which I'm going to build a ton of decks around.
Do you think Asa would play this over the Sysop we saw earlier?
I think it would play both.
Fair.
Because why not? Like if that's your kind of game plan, is like, let's res a load of ice, let's make a load of money off it. Let's also res that ice for like cheap to free. Maybe you put this in Architects of Tomorrow along with your sysup guy, and you res your entire board for free, like very, very quickly, and you pop up and then you big deal off. Something along those lines. Yeah. I think this is
Okay,
a ton of fun.
there are only 2 things I can say in response to that tour de force bar, which is bravo, clearly the best in the game. Amazing work. You're going to be putting us all to shame with this card. Secondly, I can't believe you made me remember that Mirage was a card. What brain space I could have been using.
Yeah, it
There we
is.
go.
And that's this. I love that Andre mentioned Chimera, which, oops, I can't apparently spell, but not the one that's actually still legal and standard that does res and de-res itself. But that is a really good find that I don't think I'd seen anyone mention today. So that's a lot of fun. Um, yeah, I think this is. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, of everything that you said about the Amaze Amusements interaction, like that's great, especially with the Oppo research we just saw. Just they're gonna take 2 from Amaze Amusements, and then you're gonna hit them with Oppo research the next turn after they take 2 more tags.
Exactly.
Just oh,
Yeah, we're just spending
Yeah,
5
something
influence on this combo, right? But that's fine.
it's more than fun.
something tells me that these kind of asset-y, taggy objects we've been seeing around have got plenty of life still left in them. So yeah, enjoy that.
Yeah, if there's any worries about that, they definitely seem like they're being given a little bit of life here. All right, should we, after that tour de force, it's going to be hard to follow it up, but I think we can at least find some interesting things to say about this next card, though it's maybe, let's talk about it. We can, instead of me qualifying it. This is Tree Line. It is a ice barrier, and it is another expendable card. It is click, credit, reveal and trash this ice from HQ. Place 3 advancement counters on 1 installed piece of ice. Then it has the ability, you can advance this ice. It gets +1 strength for each hosted advancement counter. Then it has a single subroutine, which is gain 1 credit, end the run. And this is 4 to res, 4 strength, and 1 influence. So who wants to go first on this one?
I can go. I think this card is best friends with itself, which is kind of fun. Draw the second copy, you have a 7 strength barrier. That's pretty good against the Cleaver Turbine meta. And its next best friend, I guess, is Pharos. It's a shame that Mausolus rotates, which would have been the best target for this otherwise. I guess it pairs nicely with Aket as well. Yeah, it turns out you need a lot of trees to build the 7 wonders of the world, so this card will help you out.
Yeah. Are there's do people play Colossus, or does that just not get played because of Boomerang, even with this Tree Line?
I mean,
think
Colossus going to
Colossus
7
comes back.
strength.
Yeah, I think Colossus comes back now the bin breakers are gone. Like it
Yeah,
was
that's
a
fair.
very bad piece of ice for a long time. But with 3 counters on it as well, it trashes a resource, and all of a sudden that becomes quite significant.
And 2 tags? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
I do like that, at least so far, from the 2 expendable things we've seen, that they're both self-synergistic. That the first one is basically a seamless to score itself as a 4/2, and this one puts ice advancement counters on other copies of itself.
Yeah, I almost wonder, like, if you end up in a cleaver heavy meta, if you could splash copies of this out of faction, because then it's because it's one inf self synergistic. Like, if everyone's on cleaver turbine and then you just tree line a tree line, like suddenly they now have to actually go and spend real credits on their already expensive and kind of I'm not gonna say clunky, but multiple click using engine, and so you kind of like reduce the efficacy of that engine for 2 influence, which
I mean, I think you can easily see it in like Pravdvost, obviously, but also like I can see it being the barrier for certain Jinteki decks because they don't really have any barriers, and then it's also a very good Trick of Light kind of battery and way of getting Trick of Light to counters if that's any part of your game plan, which we haven't really seen at the moment, but the new ID seems very tempo led and might be a lot more of a kind of a fast advance option.
I'm
co-rules.
being called out in chat
Yeah,
here.
I was bet.
Yeah, so this is not Yeti, metamate of mine, that's hard to say, and good friend. We've been playing a lot of Prav lately. We both took Prav to a CO a few weeks ago. He did much better with it than me, so maybe I'm the wrong person to be saying this, but I feel like in Prav you're already good enough for getting the advancement counters on your ice. Like I think this card is better placed in something else that's playing advanceable ice that doesn't have that built-in way to get to churn the advancement counters clicklessly.
That's fair. One fun thing about this is that you can put 3 advancement counters onto a Doodua, which is great until they put a hush on it. But I think it's been quite hard to put counters onto a Doodua apart from through because you can't advance it kind of manually. So
Yeah, that's true. It's hard to put advancement counters on ice that should never be in your deck.
Oh shit.
Going in for the
Like,
hard shots.
I think the biggest
It's
problem
just
about this is it just dies to botchers and Bankar, right? Like they're
right.
they're the 2 kind of, you know, you might be on Cleaver and Turbine and what have you, but both of those cards deal with this very, very easily, and so your kind of placement of it and your ability to deal with Botulus is a problem. And it also in a Wayland deck, it like what barriers I want to play so many barriers now, and ones that go well with this. I want to play Aket if this is in my deck. I possibly want to play Pharos if this is in my deck. But then I've also probably got 3 border controls, and like, you know, that's a lot of barriers. Oops, oh, all barriers kind of deal.
Yeah. Can we make an oops all barriers and Stavka deck? Maybe, but it does hit some issues scaling over time. So oops.
Stavka Colossus, call it a day.
Yeah.
I just want to. I saw in chat people calling out Mirror Morph with this since it's its own click ability.
I mean, that is technically true. So on the technicality here, I think we're in a good spot.
I guess that's something to watch for if there's more expendable cards, whether any of them could play a role in Mirror Morph in that way. I don't know that this one does, but
Yeah.
All right, well, we've got one more Wayland card to talk about. This was the Gordian Blade spoiler of the day. I would say if you haven't gone to do that, uh, Lost Geek posted a link, a permanent link to that in GLC, I believe. And I would actually, you know what? Let me go and fetch that because I thought this was a ton of fun to play the puzzle, but it is ruined the second you see the card text. So go do this puzzle if you haven't yet, and you can come watch the VOD later. I'll understand the tanking of your account. But for those of you that are still here or who have done the puzzle already, here's the last Wayland card that we're going to talk about today. This is Valenteo. It is a 5 to res 6 strength code gate with the illicit subtype. As an additional cost to res this ice, take one ad publicity or remove one tag. And it has 3 subroutines, gain 2 credits. The runner loses 2 credits. End the run if you have more credits than the runner. So, what are people thinking? What interesting thoughts does this bring up for you?
This feels like a Mausolus replacement to me, and it fits in really well in the outfit. I think like on a face check, it's basically free to the outfit. You get 3 credits from your ID and 2 more from the sub. Outside of the outfit, it might be good enough to tax as long as you're okay taking that bad pub. But a lot of the time, as much as Wayland is big money, at least a lot in Ob, I feel like sometimes my credit totals are kind of a lot more in flux, where in the outfit you can comfortably sit much richer than the runner. But maybe just a 4 credit swing is good enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting one in the outfit, right? Because yeah, on the one hand, you have too big to fail. You've got other ways of making a lot of money, but also bad publicity credits count as being in the runner's credit pool at the time where this subroutine cares about them, as I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it a bit trickier to meet that clause. And I think the runner is probably happy to run through this at the cost of 2 credits if they have the credit spare. If they're spending bad publicity credits, like they can't keep doing it forever because eventually you'll be richer than them. But given that outfits usually trying to go fast and the runner just needs to get accesses, it doesn't create as many problems for them as the rotating ice like Bulwark or Mausolus would have done.
Bulwark's
But
going to.
yeah, but I mean, I think that's the reason to play it actually, just because Bulwark's going and you want more ice to give you bad pub. I think it's definitely worth a look there, though. My main question about this card is who is Pumpkin and Dumpling? When are we getting a card of this character? What a great handle!
I assumed it was the big, like the big figure and the small figure in it, but I guess not. I guess that big figure is probably Valenteo, and the small figure is the runner. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I had a little Google earlier. I think Valenteo translates roughly to like bully
Mm.
or something like that. Somebody pushes somebody around.
my main thought about this, and Ryan's actually brought it up in chat, is that it makes regulatory capture playable in startup, which is like something that it has not been. Wayland have had this agenda in startup, which they basically just can't play, which I think is kind of cool. And again, we've now suddenly got this kind of potential fast advance deck in startup, which looks a bit better than it has done for a while, which is cool. And it's not instantly broken by Buzzsaw with a turbine down, which is pretty important. But the main thing I like about it is the art. This is like one of the pieces of art which has just absolutely kind of jumped out at me, and I really want it on a playmat.
Yeah, reminds me a lot of the envelopment art, but
Well, there's a good
different.
reason for that, right? It's the same
Okay.
artist. So I'll pull up Envelopment. These are both Scott Uminga pieces, who has been just doing fantastic work for Wayland's intimidating ice. It seems to be a great niche for Scott, though. There's a lot of other work of his range of different ranges. We didn't shout out at the time, but Estebrado was also a Scott piece, and I think is the first human, well, biroids, but human-like biroids on from a Scott piece. So I think creative team has really enjoyed working with them, given how much work they're giving them, and I think he's been delivering some really great pieces for NSG. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this card's gonna be interesting. I at 3 influence, it seems a bit difficult to justify splat. Like I'm like, oh, maybe there are times when you'd want to res this by removing a tag instead of taking a bad publicity, because like giving the runner a bad publicity over time is gonna pay out quite a bit. But it's hard to figure out what deck would want to be doing tags and then also like care about money a lot. But I could still see this ending up in a good spot. Like a 5 strength, 6, or sorry, a 5 res, 6 strength code gate is a pretty intimidating stat line. And being a 4 credit swing on fire is like definitely notable. So
Yeah, my guess is the tag thing is not going to come up very often. If you're giving out tags, you probably want to be doing something more impactful with them, and you'd rather just take the bad pub and let them keep the tag for later punishment. But yeah, it's never bad to have that flexibility for sure.
yeah, I mean, and speaking of other things you could maybe do with that tag, we've got the final card that we're going to talk about today. This is B1001, a unique 1 cost asset Byroid Enforcer. Has a very simple ability: remove 1 tag, end the run. You cannot use this ability during a run on the server, and this is 3 to trash and 0 influence. This was the final card, I think, in Andre's set, and it also, I think, has a great art for very different reasons, um, and it's a great Mauricio Herrera piece. It's great to see him back doing more stuff for Netrunner, and I really like this stylized, cartoony feel is a fun one to have on occasion in Netrunner. So this is a really great piece for that.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed all of the artwork that I think we've seen. Is it 2 or is it even 3 pieces by him so far? And I've really liked the change in art direction a little bit with his pieces. I feel like they still fit whilst really kind of standing out in a really good way, very positive way.
Is this the steel skin artist?
I believe so. Let me check real quick.
While Jeff checks that, what camp are we in? Do we think this is Mr. X from Resident Evil, or is it the Terminator? There's been some discussion around this.
Hmm.
I'm in the Terminator camp,
Yeah, I
personally.
think it's the Terminator.
Yeah, I don't think you get to be a letter 1000 without being a Terminator reference. Steelskin Scarring was done by Elliot Burt, so a different name, but Mauricio is a returning artist. I know that they did. Actually, I am pretty sure. Yeah, so they've done a lot of Netrunner cards, but like Corset, Decoy. So Front Company is something we've seen from them this set. They've done stuff like Green Level Clearance, the original Hostile Takeover. Um, Indexing is one of theirs. That's really interesting. Almost all of their other ones are like people. So they did original Sea Source. They also actually did Vera, in
Okay.
so yeah, definitely an artist we've had around and had back for a couple of pieces. So
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
great.
Decoy. Decoy is a true classic of Netrunner comical art.
yeah, an original Ash, which I is a fantastic piece.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I guess. So a question like, what do y'all think of this ability? I think it's an odd one, as Andre was talking about, but I'm kind of curious to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what deck would want to play this. Like, it's kind of, once you tag the runner, it kind of has a trust like effect where the runner's just gonna have to go and deal with this. But feel like in the past a lot of tag stormy decks are asset decks, and I don't know how good this ability is against that. I mean, maybe in like a epiphany, if you can eventually get a tag storm on them, like they have to go trash this before they can access anything else. I don't know, and you just get your ability that way.
I feel like the one place where this is really potentially powerful, especially in those asset decks, is against decks such as Essa, where they're making a couple of very high kind of value runs with their finalities and their Vegchishkas, and often, especially Essa, like tends to not love decks that can give them a lot of tags, because they're normally not the richest. They normally don't have the time to sort of clear them all and keep on with their game plan. So kind of if you were going very wide as NEH, or maybe like the new identity or something along those lines, then you could use this to sort of, once you've landed those tags, to hopefully not sort of lose the game in the next turn. But it's also something that I'm a bit sad about, because that's one of the bits that I find most fun about those games, where you're like against CTM standardly in the past or something, and you're like, right, I've taken a bunch of tags, and then you're like, I'm going to try and win this turn or next turn. And this potentially takes that kind of go for broke turn away if it becomes a played asset. So I'm a bit on the fence about how I feel about it.
I mean, it's never a lock, right? It can't defend itself, so you can go and get it. It wastes your time, which I think is still quite powerful. It's interesting you mentioned Essa. I think Zero really interesting case when we look at Oppo research, right? Because Essa can play a whole game where they're not trashing the corpse cards, the corp is, and they're not stealing agendas either, because the agendas are in archives, having been sabotaged. So, like, whereas High Tech News was a very good card against Essa, Oppo Research is maybe not so much. But then again, if you have a card like this in your deck that kind of forces Essa to come and trash it, then your Oppo Research gets turned back on. So there's some interesting dynamics there, I think.
Yeah, but you do need to land the tag first to turn this card on. So if S is never taking tag, you're never turning on this card.
I mean, this card's best friend is just Funhouse, right? Funhouse
Yeah.
seems like the card to pair with this. You just get to they have to take the tag if they want to go to the Funhouse. You can then force the underrun, barring some encounter ability dodging, like Hush or whatever. That seems like just a really effective combo that forces them to come and deal with the Terminator here.
Yeah.
There's also the new card Virtual Service Agent, which Essa tends not to play standard breakers most of the time, preferring things like Mayflies, Botuluses, Bankars. And as long as I've read this card right, and I might not have, I think that would mean that they would always take a tag when they go through.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah,
pull in.
it's if they do anything other than break it with a decoder, right?
Exactly. So like that would be another, like you could, and a lot cheaper than Funhouse as well, but a pretty decent kind of way of pairing with our Terminator friend here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I do think Virtual Service Agent was a card we didn't talk about a ton, and I think it is kind of going to be interesting in those Anarch matchups where they really don't want to install decoders, especially now that they can't install it from the heap for free. Though who knows? I guess we still haven't seen any, and we haven't really seen much of any Anarch cards yet. So maybe there's some bin breakers returned, but Virtual Service Agent does seem like a cheap way to power up your B1000. I think Ping was also a card that got mentioned in the chat, which I think is a good shout out. Like this B1000 turns Ping into a border control, which I think is kind of interesting.
And you've got D-Res in purple as well, so you could get quite a few uses out of that Ping.
Yeah, potentially. So like it's interesting. That said, like the remove a tag is going to be at least a little bit of a cap because I don't think we've seen a corp card that can give more than like 2 to 4 tags at a time. So you're gonna have kind of a finite number of charges, and the runner can go and contest this asset, and it is unique. So maybe you don't want to be running 3 because it doesn't do anything until you land a tag, and then only the first one does anything. So it's gonna be a really interesting one to see if and where it lands in the meta. Um, but yeah, so I don't know. It's an interesting card for sure. I
Yeah,
think
I mean, I would.
oh,
I'm sorry. I just a final thought. I think I could look at playing this in like a tempo R plus or something. Just when if your turn is install agenda, advanced agenda, put B1001 in another remote. It's just another click that the runner has to spend coming and dealing with it, or they might think it's a spin doctor or whatever, and then yeah, they're losing clicks which they could be spending on stealing agendas or taking clearing tags. So could play well with that game plan.
cool. Well, I that's a good point, and I think with that, I'm going to start wrapping it up. So I'm going to maybe ask now that we've gotten a good chunk of cards, and I think more than one card spoiled for every faction, but HB. I'm going to ask. I'll start from the top. CobraBubbles, what's your favorite card we've spoiled so far?
Ooh, I mean, it's hard not to say Arasana, not really for the mechanics, just the character is so exciting to me. And also, I had the privilege of editing the article that Zoe wrote about Arasana, the design article, which honestly got me more. The article alone got me more hyped for this set than anything else, including any of the cards. I think it's a fantastic insight and summation into partly where the design team is head was at with the set, but also just the kind of um, activist ideology behind Netrunner, I guess I would say. The like just it feels really important at the moment to be involved in a game like this that is putting trans rights front and center in such a obvious and really thoughtful way. And that's been really, really exciting to see. So I guess I'd say Arasana for that reason.
All right, Baramu, you're up next. What's your favorite card that's been spoiled so far?
I mean, first couple of weeks that these cards are legal, you're going to see me playing a lot of Arasana online because I'm going to be testing that, sticking every program in the sun in that ID and seeing what it does. And also, kind of obviously, off today, I'm going to be playing a ton of Cyber Sound Harvester in probably every faction just to test it out because I feel like there could be there's definitely some fun that can be had with that.
All right, Coldlava, final pass of this question off to you.
Think it's Epiphany. That looks like a really fun ID. I don't know, just being able to see your deck, get your assets, get them into play. Like I don't know exactly what that deck's doing yet, but it looks like a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, hopefully we know there's a couple more yellow cards out there waiting for us. So waiting to see that. I should give a shout out to Andre's video, the No Signal Station podcast, Lost Geeks, Gordian Blade spoiler. People should go check out all of those and consume them. I thought they're all great content. And I also want to give my guests a final chance to shout out what they do. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to shout out Mike or Manverupt from NSG Community, who's basically been the architect of this previous season once again. Um, just really incredible hard work from Mike all week and in the weeks leading up. And if you've enjoyed Spoiler Season at all, I know I have. It's been really fun so far. Despite some little glitches here and there, it's been really fun. And I think, yeah, Mike doesn't get enough praise for his work, so I'd like to shout him out.
I'd like to just again plug if you want to come and join me on a Monday night. I stream on YouTube as WooTube and also on Twitch, but don't tell the police. And maybe you should subscribe and hit the notification bell in just in case anything happens this Thursday. I don't know what would be happening this Thursday night, but just in case, you never know.
Very cool. And Coldlava, I don't know if you have anything to plug, but I want to throw it to you as well.
I guess I don't really, but if you ever want to find me, I'm normally around GLC. And thanks for the mod team there for being great and keeping that space an amazing place to hang out.
Yeah, that's a very good shout as well. And I want to thank all three of you for coming on. This has been a very fun chat. Thanks to everyone who's been watching and chatting in the stream chat. It's always good to see so many people. I hope y'all are enjoying Spoiler Seas as much as I am. I'm looking forward to every day, and also counting down the couple of days till my spoiler set comes out. So looking forward to that, and I will catch you all tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern time, and stay, enjoy the scoops until then.